All right, let's finish up. You know what? Let's continue on. There's a few slides. It's not a lot of code, but just more talking about what time zones are to wrap it up, because we were talking about time initially, but we ran out of time. Imagine that. But just to let you know, because there is some important things here, and this shouldn't take too long. And then I'll issue the quiz because we don't have too long until the class ends. Time zones. So, what are time zones when we're dealing with time? Right, so the time zone is a region that follows a uniform local time, which is legally stated by that country. So we're dealing with different countries. Obviously, each country has a different time zone. Not each country, but for each region, right? So if it's obviously 10 o'clock here in Toronto, it's 3 a.m. some places where you are, so I'm keeping you up pretty late. Or maybe it's midday. So we have to deal with these issues, right? So common for many countries to have its own unique time. Large countries like USA or Canada have multiple time zones. It's true, we have multiple time zones. Eastern Standard Time on the East Coast, right? The West Coast, Central Standard Time. It's confusing, to be honest. I'm in Eastern Standard Time, but yes, like Vancouver's 4 hours Pacific Time, 4 hours ahead. I forget, it's about 4 hours. So China is large enough to have multi-time zones, so she uses only one time zone. This results in an awkward situation where the sun rises around 10 a.m. in the western part of China, and then it may also rise at a different time, right? One thing we saw, GMT. So we kind of already saw that in some of our outputs of time is what is GMT, right? That is Greenwich Mean Time. So reference to some other locales, right? The Korean local time is normally GMT plus 9 hours, right? So GMT, Greenwich Mean Time, is an abbreviation of Greenwich, which is the clock time of the Royal Observatory in Greenwich, UK, located at longitude of 0. So, sometimes I didn't even know what this was. What is GMT? I had no idea. It was a Royal Observatory in the UK in the longitude of 0. I guess that that had some very good reference point, right? So the GMT began spreading, I guess, this format in 1925 and became the world standard time in January 1st, 1972. So all those years that I saw GMT, I didn't know that back history, right? So just so you know, Greenwich Mean Time. Universal Time, UDC. Again, you see the UDC so many times. You don't know that it represents a universal time. So many consider GMT and the UDC the same thing. The two are used interchangeably. In many cases, they're true, but they are actually different. UDC was established in 1972 to compensate for the slowing problem of the Earth's rotation. So they had to compensate for this, right? Because the Earth rotates slower. Probably a bunch of physics, science involved, right? Remember, as we said, the HTML was created by CERN and the Atomic Collider. So this thing has relevance as well, right? This time system is based on the International Atomic Time, which is used for the cesium atomic frequency, set the time standard. So in other words, UDC is more accurate replacement for GMT. I didn't know that. I didn't know, again, I just use these GMT, UDC. I had no idea the context behind it. A lot of times you're working with coding, you don't know why you're using these things, but this is why. So the actual time difference between the two is tiny, but UDC is more accurate choice for developers. See, I never knew that, why we'd always use UDC in code. It's because it's more accurate. So you know what? Sometimes I learn things too, which is very often every day. So offsets. So now we can deal with offsets now, because now we're dealing with different time zones. We have to offset these things to handle certain situations, right? Just think of any type of, departing flights in airports. So difference between UDC's standard time and local time is called an offset, which is expressed as plus 900 hours or minus, 3 hours, 300 hours. So it's common for countries to name their time zone using their own unique names. So for example, Korea is called KST, Korea Standard Time, and has a certain offset value, which is expressed as KST equals UDC plus 9 hours, right? So the 9-hour offset is also used by not only Korea, but also Japan, Indonesia, and other places, right? That's what it's for. So setting a time zone in our strings, when we did a very simple new up for new date, we just pass it in a certain thing, it'll default to that GMT, right? So when we pass a date string without saying the time zone, JavaScript assumes it's in the date timer in UDC before converting it to your browser's time zone. So if we console log the exact birth date, you'll see there in this situation here, it'll actually put GMT plus 900 hours, right? Korean Standard Time if you happen to be in that region, right? It's going to offset it. But this leads to many errors. That's just going to come along with the ride for this, right? Which is why date objects so problematic, right? So it can lead to errors when the date return is off by many hours. To avoid it, passing the time zone along with the string. So now we can append in our new date the GMT and the offset, right? So now, again, like we can actually control it a little bit more, but you can also pass some, but not all time zones. Again, it's a little problem. So maybe we have Pacific Standard Time here, you know, like, and it does actually do the offset again, right? So we can actually pass in, but not all time zones. In the markup, it'll probably show you the time zones that you can pass in. So it gets to be a problem. So wrapping up the last slide, I wanted to mention is because of all these problems with JavaScript, there are libraries. This is one really good one is called Moment. And you may use it in JavaScript. You may use it in Node.js. Actually, you can use it in anything because it's a really great way of working with dates. So getting the date and time right is no small task. Every country has its own different way of formatting dates, different time zones, daylight saving times, all this thing. So this is a third-party package that you can use, right? You can leverage it, and we haven't seen npm, but you could install it. But Moment is actually a really good thing to actually get into. So let's take a look at it, and it's kind of simple. That's Finding Nemo, right? It's very simple documentation that does things very well. So it's all based on time. And it allows you to format dates in a really nice way, relevant time, calendar time, in a nicer way than maybe JavaScript. Locale support. We are talking about time zones, so there should be a whole section here on Moment time zones. So if you go into time zones, parse and display dates in any time zone. So it handles a lot of these things. So you'll be able to select the time zone you're in, and then it'll allow you to format them in the right way. So it'll take Los Angeles time, America, New York, by date, Asia, Tokyo, and format it in a way for you. So you can format these time zones easier. Convert between time zones. So you have a New York time zone, you have Los Angeles and London. So you can actually format the differences between the time zones. So this is a really freely distributed package, because this is where we start getting, when you start doing a lot of JavaScript, you realize there's a lot of external third parties that does a better job. And sometimes you may need to leverage it. In fact, most times when you get into very complicated things like this, it's worth looking for third-party tools and libraries to help you out, because it gets very deep to those problems. All right, so without further ado,